When her husband died, she got nothing but a debt and 2 kids. But the widow wasn't going to let that stop her. She would turn that 200-acre ranch into the biggest ranch in the valley. And no one was going to help her. No one except him. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows of the old farmhouse. Inside, Martha pored over paperwork spread out on the kitchen table, her brow furrowed in concentration. The flickering light from the oil lamp cast dancing shadows on the walls, highlighting the dust motes swirling in the air. Her 2 children, Billy and Mary, sat quietly at the table, their heads bent over their books. Despite the darkness outside, the room was filled with an almost sacred silence, broken only by the scratching of pens and the rustling of papers. Martha had been alone for almost 2 years since her husband, George, died. He left her with a mountain of debts and nothing else but the clothes on their backs. However, what he didn't know was that under his gruff exterior, George loved his wife and children more than anything in the world. His rough hands, calloused from years of working the land, were a testament to his hard work and dedication to the family. Despite the tough times, Martha found solace in those hands, the memory of them still lingering on her skin like a phantom limb. The weight of George's absence pressed down on Martha like a physical burden, but she refused to let it crush her. She'd lost her best friend, her lover, and her protector in one fell swoop. But the show must go on, she told herself, for the sake of Billy and Mary. She knew that the bank would take their home if she could unpay back the loan her late husband had taken out to buy new equipment. But she also knew that she was a capable woman who could handle whatever life threw at her. So, instead of surrendering to despair, she decided to fight back. Martha looked up from the papers, her gaze meeting the concerned eyes of her children. "Don't worry, my darlings," she said, forcing a smile. "It's just some business matters." She didn't want to burden them with her worries. They were still so young and needed to believe in the goodness of the world. She would protect them, no matter the cost. Her fingers traced the worn surface of the table, remembering all the meals they'd shared here as a family. Laughter echoed in her ears, along with the sound of her husband's deep voice telling stories of his youth. It was a bittersweet ache in her chest, a longing for a simpler time before the harsh realities of life had set in. But she wouldn't allow herself to dwell in the past. She had a future to build for her and her children. Looking out the window, she saw the vast expanse of their ranch land. The same land that had been in her family for generations. It was a lifeline, a way to honor her husband's legacy and provide for her children. The next morning, the sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Martha stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking their property, the wind whipping through her hair. Below her, the ranch unfolded like a patchwork quilt, fields of golden wheat stretching as far as the eye could see, dotted with grazing cattle and horses. In the distance, she could see the weathered barn where her husband had spent countless hours fixing equipment and sharing stories with his friends. Despite the beauty of the landscape, Martha knew that their ranch was in trouble. Years of drought had taken their toll on the land, and without her husband's steady hand at the helm, it had become increasingly difficult to keep everything afloat. The bank was breathing down her neck, threatening to foreclose if she couldn't come up with the money to pay off the loan. As she stood there, the weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. How could she save the ranch? How could she provide for her children? Martha closed her eyes, trying to shut out the noise of the world. She needed to focus, to come up with a plan, and fast. An idea sparked in her mind. She remembered a neighbor, a man named Thomas Blackwood, who had recently expressed interest in buying some of their land. Could this be her solution? Martha knew that selling part of the ranch would be a last resort, but it might be their only option. With a newfound determination, she turned back toward the house, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Thomas Blackwood was a wealthy rancher from a neighboring town. He'd heard about the Carter family's financial troubles and had offered to purchase a portion of their land. For Martha, this was a difficult decision. Selling any part of the ranch that had been in her family for generations felt like a betrayal, but the thought of losing the entire ranch to foreclosure was even more distressing. She welcomed Thomas into her home with forced politeness, hiding the turmoil that was raging within her. She knew that this decision would have a profound impact on her family's future, but she also knew that she couldn't do this alone. As she sat across from him at the kitchen table, she could feel the weight of his gaze upon her. His offer was generous, too generous, and she couldn't help but wonder about his motives. Days turned into weeks, and Martha found herself torn between her pride and her responsibilities. The thought of selling part of her land still rankled her, but the alternative, losing everything, was too dreadful to contemplate. She walked the fields, talking to the wind, seeking guidance, but only the whisper of the grass answered her. Finally, she made her decision. She would sell part of the land, but only to Thomas Blackwood, the only person she trusted. The deal was struck, and Martha watched as Thomas's men began surveying the land that was to be divided. Each step forward felt like a physical blow, tearing away at her connection to the land and her family's past. Yet amidst the sadness, there was a flicker of hope. With the money from the sale, Martha could pay off the loan and keep the rest of the ranch. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A start to building a new future for her and her children. The first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, casting long shadows across the dew-kissed meadows. Martha stood at the edge of the field, her eyes fixed on the distant line where the land met the sky. Beside her, her children, Billy and Mary, mirrored her stance, their small figures silhouetted against the soft glow. It was moving day, and a palpable tension hung in the air, thick with the weight of their uncertain future. Their new home was a modest farmhouse nestled at the end of a winding dirt road. It was smaller than their previous dwelling, but to Martha, it represented a fresh start, an opportunity to rebuild their lives. As the family stood before the weathered door, Martha reached out and placed her hand on the cool wood. It was unpainted, just like the rest of the house, but to Martha, it felt warm, welcoming. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open, revealing a cozy interior filled with the promise of new beginnings. Stepping inside, Martha's eyes scanned the rooms, taking in the worn floorboards and the faded wallpaper. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. With a lump forming in her throat, she knew that this place would soon be filled with laughter, with the echoes of her children's footsteps. This was their new home. In the coming days, weeks, and months, Martha threw herself into making the ranch profitable. She implemented new techniques, cut costs wherever she could, and reached out to other farmers for advice. Her determination was unwavering, fueled by her love for her children and her commitment to their future. Meanwhile, Billy and Mary adapted to their new school and surroundings. Billy, with his infectious grin and boundless energy, quickly made friends. Mary, with her quiet determination, immersed herself in her studies, eager to learn. Watching her children thrive gave Martha strength. Their happiness was her motivation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, Martha stood at the porch railing, surveying her domain. The day had been long and tiring, but a sense of satisfaction washed over her. The ranch was slowly but surely turning round. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the barn, walking toward her. It was Thomas Blackwood, his gait steady, his eyes twinkling in the fading light. "Martha," he began, his voice echoing the warmth of the setting sun, "I just wanted to say how well your children are doing." He paused, a hint of admiration in his tone. "And how the ranch is looking." Martha felt a surge of gratitude. Thomas hadn't just bought part of her land. He'd become a friend, an ally. Together, they had turned the tide. The ranch was no longer teetering on the edge of ruin. It was growing, healing, thriving. Looking out at the land that stretched as far as the eye could see, Martha realized that she wasn't just running a ranch. She was building a legacy, one that would stand the test of time. The trials they'd faced had been immense, but so was their strength, forged in the fires of adversity. The widow had indeed been left with nothing but a debt and 2 kids. But now, she had something much more valuable, a thriving ranch and a heart full of hope. Her story proved that when one door closed, another opened, sometimes leading to places you never imagined.